What's up, booktube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I'm bringing you this month's monthly book recs topic. So if you don't know, I do run a tiny little Goodreads group called Monthly Book Recs. We use the hashtag Monthly Book Recs. I'll put it here on the screen. And it's this little Goodreads community kind of fill the gap that's been left in the booktube community with kind of the hiatus on monthly recommendations and top 5 Wednesday. So those were two groups that when I first started my booktube channel 4.5 years ago, I really enjoyed doing them. I didn't participate every week or every month, but I participated fairly frequently. I have a whole playlist down below. I think it's called, well, actually there's two. There's themed book recs or themed book lists, something like that. And there's also a top 5 Wednesday playlist. So anyways, basically what I do is every month I present a topic. It's usually a little bit more specific than monthly book recommendations topics were. So it's like it falls in between top 5 Wednesday and monthly book recs and its specificity of topics. However, you can also, you are free, I should say, to like wildly or widely interpret the topic however you want. It's just kind of a inspiration jumping off point for you to make a monthly books list. Okay, so now that spiel's out of the way, this month's topic is revitalizing reads, and I wanted to do this topic for two reasons. I did push it back. It was supposed to be last month's topic, but I think in July it works really well too. And revitalizing reads, I wanted to give a space for you to talk about books that like have invigorated you, have made you feel excited about reading. Maybe you could talk about like your favorite summer reads. I know like there's definitely we talk about like beach reads, which I don't read at the beach. You hopefully are not reading at the beach during this pandemic situation, but you know, stuff like light cat and candy or like fluffy or just fun reads. Another way you could interpret it, and this is the way that I'm probably going to interpret it, is like books that have gotten you out of a reading slump, or like comfort reads, things that you, even if you're not feeling like reading, or you're struggling to read, or you're struggling to feel inspired, maybe you're DNFing a lot of stuff, these are the reads that you have in the past could always count on to revitalize your reading, right? To reinvigorate it, to breathe life into it. And that's how I'm going to be, those are the kinds of books that I'm going to be talking about, specifically like slump busting books for me and comfort reads. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. I have been saying I need to make this video for every single day for this past week, and my boyfriend's just like, go do it right now before we do anything else. Go film the video. So got my second cup of coffee of the day. I woke up at midnight because what is time, and I'm still kind of waking up, but let's jump into these recs. Some of the books on this list are probably going to be familiar. I definitely feel like I have done a video about like how to get out of a reading slump, and I feel like some of these books have been on that list. I'll dig around on my channel. If I can find that video, I might link to it. Irregardless, I haven't actually found that video or watched it, so if it does exist and these books are from that list, it's unintentional. It just means that my comfort reads are still kind of the same. There we go. We'll start with an oldie that I haven't reread in a while, but this has been a slump busting book historically, and like a book that I could always count on to be entertaining, and that is Monster by Aileen Martinez. I think the last time I reread this was back in 2017, might have even been 2016. It was definitely like right at the start of this channel, and I read it then because I had been in like a 7-year reading slump, and I had found booktube, and I wanted to get back into reading, so I reread this book again. And it's one of those things that I've owned for probably a decade, and I've read it 4 times, maybe I think 4. I think 4 is a good number. Like I've read it multiple times because I knew that I'd be entertained by it. I knew I would get through it even if I was in a perpetual reading slump. I haven't reread it since because I haven't been in like a 10-year reading slump. Like there's a difference between that whole college 20s reading slump and like a booktube reading slump where it's like, I've only read 1 book this month. I'm in a reading slump. Like there's a big difference between those 2 things. Also, since I last read this book, I've read another one of Aileen Martinez's books, which I hated. Like I hated it a lot. So I think I would still like this if I reread it now. I think don't read Gil's All-Fright Diner. It sounds really cool, but unfortunately the protagonist is incredibly fat-phobic and misogynistic and kind of he's very predatory towards a young woman. I think she's underage. I mean, he's supposed to be a bad guy. He's like a vampire. I'm pretty sure he's a vampire. But still, it's nasty and disgusting. It's unchallenged in the text of the book. And I hate it. I hate it so much. But I love Monster. So Monster is a book that takes place kind of in our reality, but like there's all sorts of crypto, biological, supernatural creatures in our world, and unless you're kind of one of them, you just can't see them. So we have 2 protagonists. One of them's Monster, and he's kind of weird. I don't remember. There's something funky about him. Like he got himself cursed or something, but he can see cryptos, and he works for this like department of crypto control and containment, kind of like pest control or like animal control. And so he goes out and he uses runes to like kind of capture and cage cryptos that are like rampaging around the city and like turns them into animal control basically. And our other protagonist is a grocery store clerk. She has no natural way of seeing cryptos, but she's stocking the ice cream one night when like a Yeti decides to start going wild in the ice cream aisle, and she runs into Monster, and then she runs into him again. Like a bunch of weird things start happening around her, and she keeps forgetting, but at the same time she keeps kind of having this deja vu, and she wants to know what the fuck is going on. And it's a really good book. I thought she was a really good character. There's like no romance in it, which is also something I appreciated. I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't have like the same misogynistic overtones that like Gil's Diner did. And it's just like so fun. It's like it's got such a cool world building. It throws you right into the action. There's not a ton of exposition, and but there's just like all this really cool world building elements. I think if you're a fan of like Constantine, you'll like Monster. It's also just kind of like light and fun romp, right? And I think that's why it works so well as like a revitalizing read, slump buster, fun summer read, that kind of thing. Okay, another one I haven't read in a while, but I've also read this one probably about 3 times. I've owned it. Oh gosh, I bought this book for the first time back in like 2008, and that would be the Air Affair by Jasper Fforde. So I bought this at a Borders before Borders went out of business. I got it like in a clearance rack. I had no idea what it was. I hadn't read a book since my junior year of high school. I was definitely working on my associate's degree at community college. And I bought it on just kind of a whim. Well, no, not a whim. I used to buy books, but I wouldn't read them. But I actually read this one, and I read the sequel, which was crazy. I do own several of the books in the series. I have not read all of them, though. One of these days, I will get around to finishing it. So the Air Affair is, again, kind of like an alternate history version of, I think it's actually 1984. Like, it's not 2000. But the idea is that the Crimean War is still being fought, and like books, literature is one of the most important things in society, but it's very comically done. Also, there's this like kind of mad scientist who's created this machine that lets you like jump into books and kidnap book characters. Like I said, it's been a really long time since I read this, but it's nuts. And our protagonist, she works in the literary crimes department of the UK police. So traditionally, she investigates like crimes that have to do with like crimes against literature. And she has to do stuff like, you know, making peace between like the Shakespearean cultists and the Marlowe Knights or something. They have a funny name, Christopher Marlowe, the Marlowe like adherents, and who are like constantly at war with one another. And so yeah, she ends up investigating the disappearance and murder of a literary character. Like this character, this minor character from Dickens disappears, and it's like a big deal. And it leads her down this like conspiracy rabbit hole where she realizes her uncle has created this machine that lets you jump in and out of actual books as long as you have the first edition. And it's very interesting. I don't love the romance in it. I think I remember hating her love interest. And I think that's one of the reasons I didn't continue the book after the second book. But I do really want to give the series another go round. I don't know where my copies are though. There's like somewhere in storage. They're in a box. Like I thought they were in this box when I like redid my shelves, but they're not. And so I don't know where they are. One of these days I will get around to rereading them. But I've reread this first book several times, and it was one of those books that like I read and loved when I was in my 10-year 20s reading slump, which is why it's on this list. Another comfort read, and this is one that I've turned to more recently. Like I've turned to it several times in the past couple of years, as just something where maybe if I have a book hangover, or I'm just not feeling excited about the things that I should be reading or that I said I was going to read, I will read this because it's quick and it's just enjoyable. And that's Think of England by KJ Charles. So I like a lot of KJ Charles books, but this one I think more than any of the others, though I say that having reread The Magpie Lord a bunch of times, but this one I really do turn to quite frequently. So this is a early 20th century country house mystery adventure, in the vein of like, well, it's not an Agatha Christie because there's no murder, or there is a murder, but it's late in the book. It's not exactly a murder mystery. Like there's other things going on that are mysterious, right? And it's about this injured Boers War veteran who wants to investigate what he thinks is corruption in the arms manufacturing of one of the people who was like a rival arms dealer for someone who supplied faulty munitions to his regiment and got a bunch of his men blown up, including himself. And he's just he wants to investigate this corruption, and so he accepts this invitation to this country house over the weekend, and because it's like the munitions owner, and he's gonna like sneak around and try to dig up stuff. And he encounters country house fare of characters, including a poet who's very, very gay. So this is a, historical romance. Forgot to mention that part. And it's just like, I love the whole country house setting. I love the isolated mystery element. I do love the characters. And like I said, it's a quick read, and it's just a really enjoyable read. And I mean, I think I read this probably once a year at this point. And oftentimes it's kind of like the thing I read when I have a book hangover. And it's so good at just being like entertaining, light, something I can just like, I also have it on ebook, so I can just like open it up on my Kindle and escape into it. I don't have to find the book or anything like that. I think that goes a long way towards it being such a comfort read too. And it's also just like a great book. There is a sequel called Proper English, which is a prequel actually, and it deals with two lesbian characters from the book. Unfortunately, I don't really like it. I think it's not well paced. It's also supposed to be a murder mystery, but the murder doesn't happen until like 70% into the book, and it's weirdly paced. I don't understand what's going on with it at all. So I can't recommend that, but I do Think of England is really good. And I think it's been re-released. I know for a while there it might not have been available on Amazon because it was pulled from the original publisher. The original publisher, I think the original publisher is still around, but they had a big controversy a couple years ago with like racism in their editorial department, and I know the author pulled all their rights with them and was like republishing them. I think this has been finally re-released. It's self-published now, I think. So it should be something you can get. I'll leave a link to it down below if you can buy it. Okay, then the next two I want to discuss or mention are actually authors who are kind of like slump busting authors for me. The first one is going to be Gail Carriger. So I've read, at this point, quite a few of her books. I think I've read 9 of her books, which is kind of nuts to me because I'm not someone who, I'll read books in a series, but oftentimes I only read a couple and then I'm just bad at keeping up with them. I'm bad at like when I was a kid I used to read series a lot. Nowadays I don't. Like just finishing a trilogy is like I have to put effort into that. It's terrible, right? But I have definitely read 2 of Gail Carriger's series. I think they both had 4 books in them. And I've read the first book in another one of her series. I'm going to read the second one, but I have it on paperback. One of the things that makes her such a, like, revitalizing read or, like, a slump-busting read for me is the fact that her audiobooks are so good. And I have predominantly read her works in audio. I read the first 2 Soulless books in ebook form, and I have the second Prudence book in paperback or hardback, but the rest I've read in audiobook. And they're one of those things where when I don't know what to listen to on audiobook, I just go for a Gail Carriger book. When, you know, like maybe I'm in a lull or I finish something else, I pick up a Gail Carriger book, and it's always great. It's always entertaining. The audiobook is always so good. Her books are not without problems, because they do take place at like the height of the imperial English world colonialism thing, and I don't think that's always handled super well, but otherwise the books are really fun. I will say I think the Finishing School series is her best series that I've read so far. So these books all take place in a shared universe. There's paranormal stuff, there's vampires and werewolves, and there are these things called soulless who negate werewolfism and vampirism. And the first series that was written was about a soulless and like her falling in love with a werewolf and them getting married and then like all this politics around it. And it was fine. I liked some of the books more than others. The first book reads very much like a paranormal romance. The later books less so. But then I read the Finishing School series, which is a prequel series, and it takes place. It really ramps up the steampunk elements of the world, which are much more muted in the first Alexia Terabody series, or the Parasol Protectorate series. So it really ramps up the steampunk elements, and it's about a ladies' finishing school set in a dirigible, and it's actually like a secret school where they're training all the ladies to be spies, and it's so much fun. It has lots of minor characters from the Parasol books in it, and it's so much fun. That series in particular, I know, definitely got me out of some like audio slumps, like audiobook slumps, and just really cemented how much I enjoyed Gail Carriger. So would highly recommend. And I don't know, just like as an author, I know I can just like pick one of her books up and listen to it, and it's going to be fun and frivolous. It's definitely on the lighter absurdist side. They're definitely meant to be very humorous and also just goofy. Like, they really are goofy. Like, if the way some of the characters are characterized, and like the names of everyone completely absurd. It's like if Marie Brennan's Lady Trent series, but like absurdist. That's kind of how it feels. But yeah, so Gail Carriger, another author who's kind of always a slump buster for me, and has definitely gotten me out of slumps, again, often through audiobook, because now that I'm thinking about it, I think I've listened to all of her books on audio, is Louise McMaster Bujold. So she's like, I know she's been around for a while. She's not a new author, but she's a new to me author last year, and she was like my favorite author that I discovered last year. And I have read one of her novels and 6 of her novellas. I've only read her fantasy. I have not read her sci-fi. She's very famous for her sci-fi Varkosigan saga. I might be saying that wrong. She's very, very famous for that. She's been writing that forever. But I've been reading her Realm of the Five Gods books, and they're the fantasy ones. I started with the Penric and Desdemona books. I've also read the Curse of Chalion. I've already mentioned in several like wrap-ups and videos and tags how much I love the Curse of Chalion. But I think Penric and Desdemona is really great as like working as a slump busting or revitalizing read. Is they're novellas, and they're not standalones, but like they're set, most of them are set with time in between them, so it's like stuff has progressed off screen, and now we are dealing with like a new story or a new mystery or something like that. The last 3 were very closely connected chronologically. They like happened one right after the other, but the first 3 were a lot more like spread out, so you could just like pick one up, read it. It wasn't super long. It was really entertaining. This is a world where demons are a creation of one of the gods. There's 5 gods: the mother, father, son, daughter, and then the bastard. And the demons are a creation of the bastard, and they inhabit a person, and that's what gives that person wizard powers or sorcery. And the gods have varying degrees of influence over kind of like our world. And yeah, just really great books. They remind me a little bit of like Guild Wars 2, the mythology of them, which I think is fun. And it's kind of like just a nice little fantasy world. Yeah, with often murder mysteries. Like at least 2 of the novellas are murder mysteries, which I find to be really entertaining, especially in like a fantasy setting, because I do love the blending of like a mystery with another genre. Like I really love that. And so whenever I find it in like fantasy or sci-fi, it's gonna do it for me. Probably another reason why this is just something I could drop in, read it, feel energized, go off to read more things. Okay, so usually I like to recommend 5 books in these sorts of videos, and I've been scrolling through kind of my red shelf on Goodreads, and there's like a lot of really good books on here, but I gotta say, in the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've done a lot less rereading. I mean, that's why the first 2 books that I mentioned here were things that I reread a lot, but in the past, and I haven't like reread them recently. I found that since I started booktube, I don't have the 10-year 20s slump. You know, I have I only read 1 book this month, which is hardly a slump. It's only a slump by booktube standards. Which, I mean, like, I think we all know, if we're on booktube and we're reading for booktube and stuff, we all know that like our perception of like how much we read, how much we should read, how much we want to read, how much our community is reading is wildly skewed compared to a lot of people. And that, you know, that's fine. But also it means that I don't really have slumps the way I used to. And I don't, even book hangovers, I think one way I really keep from falling into too much of a book hangover is to just make myself pick up the next book. Like, I have a TBR that I need to get through in this month that I want to, so that I have enough things to talk about at the end of the month. And I don't let myself wallow for a week without reading anything. And I think since the pandemic happened, since I got laid off, I've been really diligent about just not letting myself take a bunch of days off from reading. I just keep reading something, with the understanding that if I don't like it, I can DNF it. And I think habit goes a long way towards keeping me from falling into a slump. Like, if you get into the habit of not reading, then you editing when you're here to finish this train of thought, because apparently I hit the max length of record time and didn't notice for longer than I realized before I hit the record button again. So what I was trying to say is that if you get into the habit of not reading, then of course you're not going to read. And so before I lost my job, my reading was a lot more kind of like all over the place. I didn't set specific times. I never really set how many pages I needed to, like a page goal of how much I needed to read per day. But since I lost my job, I don't want to be too undisciplined. I don't want to go too much time without reading, because I have no reason not to be reading, because I don't have a job right now, you know? And so I've been a lot more aggressive about, okay, I want to finish this book in 5 days. That means I have to read this many pages every single day, and actually sitting myself down, giving myself a time every day where I do nothing but work on getting those pages read. And I haven't been reading an outrageous amount. I haven't been reading more than usual, but I have been reading a lot more consistently, I think. And I think that, for me, goes a long way towards keeping me from slumping. And since I've been stuck at home and I haven't been going outside, haven't been going to coffee shops, haven't been going to farmers markets or the beach or anything, I will say my summer reading has been really weird. Usually I read literary fiction during the summer. I usually pick up at least one or two literary fictions, usually set in like a hot climate or the summer or something. Like a couple years ago, I read Call Me By Your Name, for instance. I think that's a really good example of this sort of thing. Last year I read, well, it was Spring by Ali Smith. It wasn't a summer book, but I kind of, read it around the early summer, because I just I like warm literary fiction type books during the summer. And I will say, usually summer is a time of the year when I do read less. But since I've been stuck inside and I've been working so hard to be like consistent about my reading, I've been reading nothing but like SFF, which is fine. And I've been reading it more consistently, so I haven't really had a slump. And yeah, I don't really know where I was going with all that. I think I was just kind of like wanted to talk about like how I get into slumps. I mean, this topic isn't even necessarily about slumps per se. I just wanted to talk about books that are always things I can go to when I want to recharge. Yeah. So tell me down below if you've read any of the things I've mentioned. Or let me know down below what like your most reread book is. Like, what is the book that is guaranteed to get you out of a slump or to like get you excited about reading again? And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.